Hello everyone, and welcome once again to yet another installment of Stuff We Wished You Knew. I'm Mike Fitzmaurice, Nintex's Vice President of Workflow Technology. And we get a lot of requests and a lot of questions from time to time about what's going on with my workflow. I'm going to look at two things that happen all the time that we wished you knew and understood, and it all has to do with batched actions and committing changes. So this is all about batches and commits. There's no substitute for actually showing you what's going on. Now this is a workflow that, how can I best put this? The very first thing we're doing in this step is we're going to make an update to a particular field. The title field we're going to update to the text test. What's the next thing we're going to do? We'll open up another one. We're going to update the exact same field. Okay, we're doing a couple of them in rapid succession. And then we're going to go read a variable out, or we're going to read that property directly out of the list item and store it in a variable. And then we can do anything we want with it. We can check and see what the value is or anything along those lines. The problem is the value that's going to be read here might not be the value that you wrote here. There's a common misconception that this is one running thread. In other words, something starts up, the workflow is a self-executing process, and on one thread, we do the update, wait for it to be finished, do the update, wait for it to be finished, and then we can go read the list item and grab the value we want out of it. Workflow actually doesn't work that way. What workflow does is it looks across, there are worker threads that belong to one process. They go ahead and look at all the pending workflows that are in progress at the moment. And then they gather together the next few steps that need to be executed in all of them up until a certain size. That's called a batch. They're batched actions. And the thing is, they'll be executed one after the other in coherent batches. And there's not necessarily a guarantee that something will be committed by the time it's read. So for example, this is going to get updated. That's going to get updated. There's no guarantee that the update will have completed being written to disk by the time this read takes place. The only way to guarantee that these writes happen and are committed and completed by the time this is read is to force them to be in two different batches. You see, when this workflow gets executed, if the workflow manager or the workflow or Windows Workflow Foundation think they can execute them all at once, well, it's going to attempt to execute them all at once and not worry about whether there are any dependencies based on time or sequencing or anything like that. It'll try to grab as big a batch as it can, and therein lies the problem. So here's what we're going to do. After these two writes, I'm going to go over here to Operations, and I take that back. It's actually under Logic and Flow, and it's called Commit Pending Changes. This is your friend. Commit Pending Changes forces everything before it to be in one batch and everything after it to be in another batch, guaranteeing that the read will take place after these writes take place. This is a very good thing. So now when I run this, I will get the desired effect that I want. All the writes, then a commit, then a read. You're totally saved. There will be a minute or two gap in between the writes. Actually, it could be a matter of a couple of seconds, could be a matter of a couple of minutes. It's okay. Remember, this is a workflow. It spends most of its time waiting for a human being to answer a question or respond to an email or fill out a form. The batches take place relatively quickly, but there is an interval of time in between when the batches execute. We just don't want a dependent read to be in the same batch as a write that it's depending on. Separate them. Commit pending changes is the way to get that done. Now, there is a way to overdo it, and that's why I'm coming over to this workflow. In this particular workflow, someone took that advice to heart and went nuts. So every time they did an update, they called commit pending changes to make absolutely certain that it was written to disk before anything else happened. In fact, you can see that there are other updates taking place and other commits, and other updates and other commits, and other updates and other commits. This is crazy. I'll tell you what's going on here. The person has erroneously overdone it. You don't need a commit after every write. What you need is a commit before every dependent read. So if we open up this set variable and we see that it wants to know, it's going to set variable single equal to the title. Okay, and I'm guessing up here in update item, we set title to equal something. Okay, good. You definitely need this commit pending changes right here. But the very next thing this workflow does is then it does a series of different updates in parallel. So here's an update followed by an update. Just pay attention to this one here over on the left. Followed by another update. Followed eventually by reading it. Set the value of a variable equal to something it's reading from disk. Okay, here's the deal. We don't need this. It's not needed at all. Why? Because we're going to take that update and that update and commit them just in time before having to read it. In fact, we don't need this. We don't need this. Yep. And we don't need, check out the item, set item permissions. I need to know a little bit more about that before I'm willing to commit pending changes. Actually, checkout item. This is going to force the checkout to be completed before we attempt to manipulate the, no, that's good. Let's leave that alone. Okay, commit before setting item permissions, commit. We don't need this commit here. We're not going to read anything out of that item. In other words, we're happy to let the workflow complete. Everything does get committed when the workflow finishes. You don't need to force an extra batch breakpoint. In fact, the only reason we're putting a commit pending changes in here is because we're going to read that value again. All right, and that, as they say, is that. Now, wait a second. That's an update item. That's a set item permissions. It's dubious as to whether or not we even need that. The reason being that, again, I don't need to read the content of that item before changing permissions on it, and the update will take place before the setting of permissions. You just need the commits before you're going to do any reads. You just need the commits when you need to have something guaranteed to be in a known state. The reason we put it here is, again, there's a very big difference between a document that's checked out and a document that is not checked out. Setting the permissions on that item might not be possible until we know that it's checked out. That's why I'm having the commit pending changes stay here, but I took it away here because this is just a list item. All right, that is that. It's a little geeky, but sometimes that's extremely important. So generally speaking, commits, good ideas. Overcommitting, not a good idea. Kind of like life. Batches and commits. Thanks for watching. And as always, not only are there things that we want you to know or wish you knew, there are things I'm sure you wished we knew. So by all means, send us requests. We love doing these things. We'd love to do more of them, and we'd love them to be based on problems you actually encounter. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.